Hello. First time trying this, so this will be interesting. Out in the middle of nowhere, really. Apart from the road that you can probably hear, and etc. etc. So why am I trying this now? Well, this morning I was out speaking with family, and opinions were expressed on a topic, and I did not agree with those opinions, but I didn't say anything. And the reason not to say anything is because, in general, arguments don't win people over. A debate might, but a debate requires a certain level of skill, understanding. A debate is a different thing than an argument, which is a different thing than a discussion. I don't want to get into the topic itself, I don't think. Although I have opinions on that and I strongly believe in them, getting into those would probably just distract from my point that I would like to make now, which is a broader topic, really. So, one of the common things that I see as a problem in general is that we are taught that we should always have an opinion. And I don't think that that's true. I don't think that we should. A lot of things that we might have opinions about, we don't really hold valid, viable opinions on, because we don't know enough to have valid, viable opinions. Which is a bit of a weird one, because we think we do. Everybody thinks they do. Because for most things that we have an opinion about, the depth of our knowledge on the opinion is good enough for our lived experience. Which makes us think that that means it's good enough, full stop. And those are two different things. So I may, for example, know enough about physics for my daily life. I have a good enough understanding. I may know enough about biology. I may know enough about politics. So it might feel to me that I have a good grasp on those topics because it's always been good enough for my lived experience. The problem is, that's only my lived experience. And there are plenty of things out there that, in those topics, that I'm completely ignorant about. And of course, this is the same for everything, for everybody, and for all sorts of topics. That's why you have experts. They've dedicated their lives, their time, to understanding a topic more in depth. Which means that necessarily they have a better understanding of it than I do. And it's the same for everybody. So a point that was raised in the discussion was that you could ask any 10-year-old and they will give you the answer. And it's true. You can ask any 10-year-old on any topic and they will give you an answer. And yes, maybe you agree with that answer, but the understanding that a 10-year-old has is that of a 10-year-old. So let's go back to physics, because that's something I know a little bit more about than other topics, let's say. When you are taught physics and you are 10 years old, you're taught things like Newtonian physics. And that they will say, these are the laws of motion. If you understand these laws, you can explain pretty much anything. And then they'll throw problems at you. They'll say stuff like, given a certain amount of mass and given a certain amount of force in a certain vector, calculate where the mass will land if you throw it. And you can do it with Newton's laws. Now, if you stopped your education there, you might believe that that is always correct, and that Newton's law is reality, and that that's all you need. Because for you, for the next however many years of your life, that is all you've needed. That's all that actually applies to you and your experience. But if you carry on your education and get to college, you'll discover Einstein and relativity, and you'll find out that actually, no, Newton's wrong. It's a rough approximation that works for general stuff, but when you want to get into any detail on any other scale other than what you generally experience in life, if you want to get to the very small or the very large, Newton is wrong. And it would be wrong to believe that he was correct, because the stuff that you've learned about Newton doesn't apply. It's not the right method in the right places for some things, and you need relativity. Now, your daily experience might be, oh, I don't need relativity at all. I can live on in my more basic understanding of Newtonian physics. And you can, but you must realize that your life actually depends on a better understanding that other people have. Your GPS would not work if it wasn't for people that understood that Newton is wrong and relativity is right, and you have to take into account mass and time delay and speed to get locations. So that's a generalized point, that you can ask a 10-year-old and they will give you a 10-year-old's answer. You might agree with it, doesn't mean it's any more or less accurate. So what I'm saying is, we need to be aware of what our ignorances are, and that almost nothing is as simple as it first appears. You can have a simplistic understanding, but that doesn't mean that you have a complete understanding. So there are topics, again, I don't want to get into the details. I do and I don't. Let's put it this way. If your understanding of any topic was last updated or rethought about when you were a child, chances are you're wrong. And it doesn't matter how long you've held that belief or how general it might be, the chances are, in detail, you are wrong. Now again, generally, what you know probably applies. But what it means is it doesn't apply for the reasons you think it applies, or for all of the situations that you think it might apply. What am I trying to get at? I'm trying to say that we should be comfortable in not having an opinion. Because a lot of the time we don't know enough to have a valid opinion. And the danger is, if you have an opinion and you then feel like other people should agree with it, or other people should slot into it, or other people should be subject to your opinion, it's harmful. You don't know enough to have a valid understanding. And if that's the case, you shouldn't have an opinion. You should offload that onto people who are experts, which is its own problem. How do you know who to trust? How do you know whose opinions are valid? Well, a lot of what people do is they find an authority figure and then decide that they're going to trust them about all sorts of things. And that's dangerous. Let's give you an example. If I take my car to the garage because it's broken down, I do that because I am aware that I don't know enough to diagnose the problem, to understand the issue, or to fix the problem. So I take it to an expert. That expert is an expert in that topic and that topic only. I will trust the mechanic's opinion on what's wrong with my car, and I might get a second opinion. If something strikes me as being not sure, then I'll take it to another mechanic and see what they say. If I do that a third time and they all tell me the same thing, I don't know, let's say the alternator's broken. They all tell me that the alternator's broken, but my gut hunch was that it wasn't the alternator because I heard a rattling from somewhere else. So I went into the situation thinking that I understood the problem. But now I've had 3 experts tell me that the problem isn't what I thought it was, it's something else. Do you think that I should trust those experts? Or trust my own gut instinct? Of course I should trust the experts. But should I trust those experts if they tell me something about, I don't know, a dentist? Or health? No, because they're not experts in those topics. We should never trust an individual, no matter how clever they are, or how experienced they are, or how expert they are. We should trust a consensus of experts. And the problem with modern society is that we don't. We all think that our opinion is as valid as a consensus of experts. That's why you get the insanity with the COVID stuff. I mean, the World Health Organization, all these experts, these people, thousands and thousands of experts who have spent their entire lives studying a specific topic in depth. Their consensus was, this virus is airborne. And look what politicians did. Look what the general population believed for ages. They didn't listen to the experts, and how many people died. You could say the same thing about some of the stuff that's happening in the world elsewhere. There are certain people that just want you to be angry at another bunch of people. They want to outsource blame. It's happened before, it'll happen again. Last time it happened in bulk, it was the Second World War, and it was Jews. Jews are to blame. Jews are foreigners. Jews are outsiders. They're not even people. That was what we were told. Absolute lies. Disgusting. Wrong in every way. And yet, what happened, happened. It's our responsibility to outsource to experts, to not think that we have all the answers, because we don't. The number of things that we have valid opinions on is small, and it's related mostly to stuff in your personal experience. Now, if you have personal, lived experience, then you're in a better position to say. But it doesn't mean that you have a universal one. It doesn't mean that you're correct in everything, even on topics that you have lived through. You are only one data point. So what's my thing? My end point is we should all have more patience. We should all have more compassion. We should all realise that we know a lot less than we believe we do. And we should also accept responsibility. Our opinions affect other people. And if our opinions are not well formed, we can have a terrible, terrible effect on so many other people out of ignorance, believing that we know more than we do. At the end of the day, my opinion is, if people are happy, let them be happy. If people aren't hurting others, let them get on with stuff. This is, of course, where, in certain issues, a certain group of people want to persuade you that another group of people are responsible for a great many evils. I will touch on a topic. At the moment, the trans community is getting an awful lot of blame for an awful lot of things. The stuff that you will read in the paper will say that, oh, sexual assault this, sexual assault that, etc., etc. And I'm not going to say that that doesn't happen. Of course it happens. What I'm saying is, you can't take that in isolation. If you want to look at a community or a group of people responsible for the most damage to other people, you need to lock up white men. And you need to do that because just go look at the prison statistics. Who are the most frequent offenders? What group is the most dangerous to the most other people? Who represents the most rapists, the most murderers, the most people in fraud? White men. So you can't just take it in isolation, and you can't just point at these things. You have to look at what the statistics actually are. Now again, if you want to go back to trans people, they are much more likely to kill themselves because of the effects that society has on them through ignorance. And that's not fair. They're also much less likely to be in any particular criminal group. So you've got to think about things. These topics are wider than they first appear. And if you haven't considered things in any greater breadth or depth, your opinion is probably invalid and probably harmful to a group of people. Yeah, so that's my long-winded waffle anyway. There's plenty of other points I probably would have preferred to make. I'm not good at this. I'm not a debater. There's a reason I stayed quiet when those opinions were expressed. It's not just because that arguments would happen, and arguments don't really convince anybody of anything. They tend to entrench people in their own viewpoints. But it's because I need time to think about counterpoints. I can't work on the spot. I'm not a good debater, it's a skill. I don't have that skill. But anyway, my long-winded point. It's almost always wrong to have a gut reaction to any community that's negative. You have to assess why you think that way and how valid the reasons are. Not by way of validating your own lived experience, but by way of, okay, how many other viewpoints might there be? How narrow might my experience actually be? Am I only thinking this because I have been exposed to a certain limited scope? Do I know any trans people? Do I know any gay people? Do I know their lived experience? Do I know the hurt that they've gone through? We need to learn empathy so much better. So, anyway, have a nice day. Try and think of things from other people's perspectives. And try just not to get involved in other people's business, because most of the time, they're not involved in yours. See ya.